the one, the only, Ben Sion.
Good afternoon and welcome to Yeshiva YouTube, Just Daf It. Today we're doing Daf Gittin, Daf Chaf number 21. Great share for you today, a very interesting share in terms of a lot of different halachas about Gittin. We're talking about the concept of Gita v'chatzero boin ke'echad. The get and the chatzer comes together. Very lamdish case. On Amud Beza talks about mechuber lakarka, writing a get on something which is attached to the ground. We'll explain the machlokas in the previous mishnah between Rabban and Yosef Glili, whether you can write a get on something which is considered to be Baal Chayim, it's living, an Eved or an animal, or on something like a non-living organism, like a leaf of a tree. We'll talk about that. Let's get into it. Chav HaMavez on the bottom, about 6 or 7 lines out. Rami Rachama asked the following question. She had a tablet, her own tablet. Now, nowadays a tablet is something else. She has a tablet. Technically, if you write a get on a tablet, right? Even though they're digital words, this is a Gemara that says it's kosher. If you wanted to know, if you can write a get on a tablet, it has to be on parchment, you can write it on a tablet. Shehi Shalah, it belonged to the woman, right? It has to belong to the man. The get kosav aleh, it was written the text of the get, the correct text of the get. And then we see one day he's holding on to it, and now he wants to megarish his wife with it. It used to be, we know it was hers. Mao. Do we say that she was makna to him? She gave it to him. Right? He has to own it before he gives it back to her. Maybe she doesn't know how to give it. Maybe she wanted to give it to him, but she doesn't know how to make a kinyan. Amar Abaye says, Tashma, let's bring a proof. Af hu haid, a certain rabbi, I believe they say this rabbi was Rabbi Yehuda Bar Eli, or Rabbi Yehuda Meseira, Yehuda Bar Ben Bava, actually. He gave testimony. Al Kfar Katan Shaya beside Yerushalayim, a small village next to Yerushalayim. Tellstone. There was an elderly man there, a sage apparently. He would lend money. He was very wealthy. He would lend money to all the people in the village. But he would write the document, the loan document, with his own hands. Other people would go ahead and sign the document. Then he would give the loan document to these people, right? Who would then give it to him in exchange for money. The Chachamim said it's good. We learn from Pasuk and Yirmiyah, the person who acquires something, right? The seller has to, when he gives over the shtar mechira, he has to own it. The seller, he has to give it to the person who buys it. Similarly, when a person is borrowing money, he has to own the document that he's giving to the lender. And here, the document originally belonged to this person, the rich person, who was the lender. Don't we say that the sage was makna, even though he wrote it himself, he was makna, he made a kinyan, the documents belonged to them. So you see, it does work. We do assume he did. Amarava, Razumai Kusha. What's the question? What's the proof over here? Dilma Zakin, shiny. He was an elderly person. He was a wise, sagely person. So therefore, he knew what to do. The other laknuye. A different proof. Right, when you write a document, let's say someone borrows money from someone else, you have two chasimos, two signatures, right? And then after the signatures are written, a co-signer comes and he wants to guarantee the loan. So he writes his name after the signatures. So there's no chasimos, there's no signatures on the co-signer has to pay back. If the original person can't pay back the loan, the person who lent out the money can take payment from the co-signer from a property that's available. He can't take money from encumbered properties that was sold in the interim, but if he has land, he can take his land. So you see what? The person who is lending the money had to be makna this document to the Arev in order to write his name. We assume he knew how to do it. Amar Rav Ashi. And here we're not necessarily talking about a zaken, a wise person. Amar Rav Ashi, my kusha. What's the question? Dilma gavra shiny. Maybe men are different. The other laknuye. Right? In this case, we're talking about a woman. A woman who wrote it on a tablet. Maybe she doesn't know how to makna her tablet, to transfer her tablet's ownership to her husband. The proof is from here. Isha koseves at gita, va'ish kosev shovro she'en kiyum al get elam b'chosamo. The Mishnah says that a woman can write her get. Right? We mentioned yesterday that really a man's supposed to write the get. He's supposed to pay for the get, but the Rabbanan shifted the responsibility to the woman in order that a man should be more eager to divorce his wife. There shouldn't be agunos. She can write her get, and doesn't say what happened, but she has to transfer it to the husband. Va'ish kosev shovro. The man, right, can write the receipt, right? He's going to pay off the ksuba. And he gives this receipt to the woman who's going to give it back to him. She has to give it back to him. When it actually becomes a get, when it becomes a real shtar, it's when it's signed. And therefore, even though the woman wrote the get, right, when it went to the husband, it was signed under the auspices of the husband. So therefore, he was the one that did. So we see that a woman knows how to write a get and give it to her husband. So that's the proof that it does work. We knew that a woman would do it. And in this case, where we find the tablet in the man's hand, he could be Magarisha with it. Amarava, he wrote for her a get, and he gave it in his Eved Kenai's hand. The cost of La Shtar Matan Olav. Then he gave a present, shtar, right, a document saying that he gave this Eved as a present to the woman. And the Eved is holding a get Isha, right? Kanaso Muskareshes, but at the same time, simultaneously, this is called Gito B'Chatzeiro Boin Ka'achad. He's kona both the Eved and the get at the same time. She's kona and she's divorced. V'amai. The Gemara says Chatzer Malachas, Chatzer Malachas Lo Kana. Right? The reason that you're kona through an Eved holding it normally says V'nasan B'yad. You have to put it in her possession. The Gemara at the end of the Masechet doesn't have to be in her hand literally. Anything which is like her hand, like her courtyard or something like that. But we need it to be similar to her hand. And a chatzar has to be immovable. It can't move. If it's moving, it's not similar to her hand. A hand can't move. It can move a little bit, but it can't really move too far. It's attached to your body. So a chatzar, an Eved, can walk all around. So it can't be a good chatzar to be makabel again in the chatzar. Chatzar malachas lo kana. Chitema ba'omed. He'll tell me he gave it to the Eved. If it was standing in one place, he said, stand here until I write the shtar matan and give you with the get to my wife. If he has the ability to walk, even if presently he's sitting or standing, it doesn't work. The Gemara says he's talking about a case where he tied the Eved down. If he tied the Eved down, he has no capability of walking, and therefore it would work in such a case. Rava says a different teaching. Get, he wrote her a get. He put it in his chatzar. And then he gave the chatzar as a present to her. She acquires the chatzar and she's divorced with it. We need both of these teachings of Rava, both of the Eved and also the chatzar. The Yeshri and Eved, if we just would have taught the teaching about Eved, hava amina dafke Eved, only about Eved. There's a problem. Let's say a man takes a get for his wife and he puts it into his friend's chatzar, right? And then his friend gives his chatzar to this woman. So he has a get from her husband in there, but it's not, she wasn't kona the get in the chatzar b'bas achas at the same time, right? The chatzera it's not called v'nasan biyada because he didn't put it in his own chatzar, he put it in someone else's chatzar. So therefore, there was no nasan biyada, right? Because the chatzar was given to her afterwards from someone else's possession. So we think it's not good. Kamash Malan, if it's his chatzar, it's good. If we just taught me the halach about a chatzar, how me a dafka chatzar? Aval Eved ligs are kafos out the esher, kafos. Yubi goes there. Even an Eved if it's tied down, because sometimes he'll give it to the Eved when he's not tied down, and we said that's chatzar ma'alecha. That's a problem. Kamash Malan, if he's tied down, we're not worried about it. Kamash Malan. Amar Abaye michti. Let's see. Chatzar mehecha israbi. Where do we know chatzar from? Miyada. It says v'nasan biyada. Yada, her hand is her possession. Ma yada is ben midaita ben balkarcha. Just like her hand, right? You can do it whether she wants to accept it or against her will, right? A gerushin is done by the man, even if again the woman doesn't want it. Av chatzera isa ben midaita ben balkarcha. So too, a chatzar is the isa be'mi daita be'mal karka. The chatzar has to be similar to her hand. It has to be something which could be forced upon her. Hamatana, But here, where he wrote her a shtar matana, he gave her a present of the eved or the chatzar. Midaisa isa bal karcha leisa. She doesn't have to accept the present. It's a present for him. It's up to her. A get she can't not accept, but a matana, a present, she could choose not to accept. So how does it work? So Maskil Rav Simi Barashi asked on Abayi's question. Right, a woman. We're going to learn later on in the Masechta that both the man and the woman could set up an agent to collect their get. The woman, instead of collecting her get herself, she can send an agent to collect the get from the husband or from the husband's agent. Right? She can choose if she wants to make an agent. She's not forced to make an agent, and it works. And it would be a shliach l'kabbalah. So the Gemara says, and it still works over there, even though it's not against her will. It wouldn't work if it's against her will. So Abaye would answer that shlichus miyada is rabbi. Shlichus is not because of yada, right? Yada, it teaches about chatzar. It has to be have the ability to be bal karcha. But over here, it's learned from someone else. Mivishalach v'shilcha. It says v'shilcha mi beisa. It could have said v'shalach. He's sending her away. Why v'shilcha the extra A? To teach me as rabbi, to teach me that she could also make a shlichus. Both he and she could make a shliach, and therefore shilcha, the woman could send. She can make a shliach to accept her get. So therefore, it's not comparable. Yibai say a different answer, protecting Abaye's question. Shlichus to kabbalah nami eshkachan bal karcha. Even by shlichus, there is an aspect of bal karcha. She can am makabel get lebito ktana bal karcha. A father can be makadesh his daughter when she's a ktana, and he also could accept the get for his daughter a ktana bal karcha. He can make a shliach to accept the get for his daughter who's a ktana. So you see, shlichus is bal karcha. So therefore, Abaye's question is back in place. Abaye is asking. You have two ways of verifying Abaye's question on Rava. It comes as a machlokas in Rava and Abaye. Rava seems to say these two cases of Eved and Chatzar works. Abaye says it doesn't work. I'm going to explain the machlokas in Iyun with Ben Si and what are really they arguing about. The Mishnah said al shal zayis. It writes it on a leaf of an olive tree. The Rabbanan say it's good. Yossi Lili says it's not good. Bishlam yad de Eved, right? So it also said you can't write it on. Well, the Rabbanan said you could write it on the arm of an Eved and give her the Eved. So, according to Rabbi Yossi Gili, yad lo efshar lemixie. You can't give it on the hand of a eved because you're not really allowed to cut an eved's hand off, right? You're not allowed to damage someone, so you can't cut it off. We're going to learn, right, something. You can't be mechutzar ktzitza, right? You have to have a kasav and nasan. You have to write it and give it right away. You don't have to cut it off. Ela karen shal para. I'm sorry, the eved, the arm of an eved, because you can't cut it off. So it's his whole body. You only wrote on its arm, so you can't be divorcing with the arm because the rest still belongs to you. Ela karen shal para lixi. If you wrote it on the horn of a para, of a cow, cut it off and then give it to her. Amar Akra v'kasav v'nasan la. Misha enam chutzar laksiva v'nasina. It says you have to do two things: write it and give it. These cases of an eved, and certainly by a para, the horn, you have to write it, and then cut it off, and then give it. So therefore, according to Yossi Lili, that's why it's possible. Yossi Glili Omer. I'm sorry, I think everyone agrees you can't write it on an Eved's hand. Let me just make sure of that. 1 second. This Mishnah on... Where is this Mishnah? Where is this Mishnah? Alright, I'm lost over here. Am I learning Daf It Gittin? What am I learning over here? Here it is on Yoted Amid Aleph. Okay, so according to the Rabbanan, they said you could do it. You could do it on the yad of an evet and the karen of a parah. Obviously, the Rabbanan don't hold of this problem of mechutzar ketzitza, at least by the parah, and they hold there's no problem. You gave her the evet, so you gave her the entire evet. You don't have to cut it off. and maybe also by they don't hold. You have to cut it off by the party. He gave her the parah as part of the parah. He gave it to her. You don't have to cut it off. So that's what the Rabbanan would hold. Basically, this is a problem. So the Gemara continues. Chafal and Beis. The Gemara says. Riosi Aglili says, my time in the Riosi Aglili. Riosi Aglili says all these things are possible. The Sanya, how do you know even in Alel Shal Zayas and Ochlin or Bali Chaim are possible? My time in the Riosi Aglili. The Sanya Sefer. It says Sefer. Ainly Allah Sefer. I only know a parchment. Minai the Rabbah is called Davar. How do you know anything is included? Talmud Lomer V'kasav La Mikol Makom. It says V'kasav La Sefer Krisos. He writes for anything and he can write anywhere. Imkimatum or Sefer. Why does it say Sefer? Because you have a cost of life, right? It's around anywhere. Ma Sefer Davar Shem Ruach Hayim Veino Ochal. A Sefer. What are unique aspects about it? It doesn't have life to it, and it's not a food. So too, Af Kol Davar Shem Ruach Hayim Veino Ochal. So therefore, you can't write it on the leaf of a tree. Again, it doesn't have Ruach Hayim. Or you can't write it on food. The Rabbanan. Sorry, you can't write it on an animal which has ruach chayim. I mean, you can't write it on a food which is alish al zayis, is a leaf of an olive tree you could eat. Rabbanon, iksiv b'sefer. Everyone said b'sefer where the bay is k'degamar. You would say you're right. It has to be specifically like a sefer, and can't be something which is bali chayim, or it can't be something which is food. Hasha the ksiv sefer without the base, the sfira zarim hu da'asa just basically tells you that there are certain words, a certain text formulation, a standard formulation for the get. Harayat mutar l'chalim. We'll learn later in the Masechta. That's all it's teaching. Rabbanan have a cost of my avdei. So what do they? Why is the next word the cost of law? What are you going to do with that? I mean, ba'ilei b'ksiva miskaresh, the name miskaresh is bekesef. Tell you to emphasize, you can only be divorced through a shtar, a written document. By giving her money, he can't divorce her. You might have thought, right? It says v'yatzav haisa, right? The way she leaves is the way she came in. Mahavaya bekesef, just like learn Maseches Kedushin, the beginning of Maseches Kedushin. One of the ways of validly being mekadesh her is with money. Also, he can take her out of his rishus. He can divorce her by giving her money. No. V'idach. Where does he know that from? Nafkalei mi sefer krisa. Sefer karsa. Vein davar achar karsa. Sefer is written next to the word krisa. So only a sefer, only a written document can divorce, could sever their marriage, nothing else. V'idach. What do the Rabbanan do with this? Mi ba'ilei davar akores beino lebeina. It has to be, the get has to be written in a way that it severs their bond completely. Because like Rice says, I'm giving you this get, and I'm making a condition you're never going to drink wine for the rest of your life. You can never go back to your father's house for the rest of your life. Ain't that krisa? That's not possible to keep, and therefore it's not a complete severance. Ad shloshim yom, however, he says, megarish you on condition that you don't go to your father's house, you don't drink wine for 30 days. That's something which normal people could fulfill that tonight, and therefore it is a krisos. Hareza. The other person, where does he learn that? From Mikaris Krisus, he learned it out. Rabbi Yossi learned it out from Karis Krisus. Could have said Sefer Karis. Why Krisus? An extra word to teach you both things. Ve'idach Rabbanan Karis Krisus lo darshi. They hold it's not significant. The Torah said the word Krisus instead of the word Karis. The Mishnah says Ein kosin u'mechuber lakarka. You don't write a get on something which is attached to the ground. Kosov u'mechuber. Right? In the previous minute, we talked about writing on the hand of an eved or a parah. Those things are not attached to the ground. Here, where it's attached to the ground, it's a problem. Kasav mechuber, if you wrote it on the mechuber karka, on a tree, let's say, talsho, and then you cut it, v'chasmo, when you sign the bark of the tree when it's cut off, right? Even austin la kasher, it's kasher. The Gemara is going to ask. It's a steer of the first two lines. The first line said it's not kasher. Now it's kasher. Rabbi Yehuda Posel, even in this case, you have to both write it and sign the document while it is severed from the ground. Rabbi Yehuda Meser Omer, en kos v'lo ala nayar amachok v'lo al diftara. You can't write a get on something which is paper which is erasable, or diftara basically is parchment which is not treated with gold. That's where it's erasable. The Nezhu Yachal is Dayif, because you can forge it. You can take out the names, you can take out the time, you can take out the place. The Chacham Machshir and the Chacham say these things are okay. We'll explain the Machlokas in the Gemara. The Gemara says, Kasal Mechuber, if you wrote on the Mechuber, Ba'amar Dreisha en Kosvin. Right? The beginning of the mission started off, you don't write on the Mechuber. And then we said, if you wrote on the Mechuber, it could be good. Amar Rabbi Amar Shmuel, V'hu Sheshayir Makom HaTorah. We're talking about a case where he wrote it, but he only wrote that there's two parts to the get. There's the Toref and the Tofes. The Toref is the main part of the get, where basically it says the man's name, the woman's name, the time, the Zman, and the place where the get happened, where it was given. And also it says Harei Mutar L'Chol Adam, which is basically the main language of the get. The Tofes is just the rest of the get, the formalities which tell you all the laws that happen once Gerushin takes effect. So we're talking about a case where he wrote only the Tofes, but not the Torah, not the main part of the get. If that's what the second line of the Mishnah is talking about, where he didn't write the main part, and he wrote it after he'd severed it from the tree. He says the same thing. And the Gemara comments, it's Rebbe Lezer here. This way of answering the question follows Rebbe Lezer's sheet. The Amar Edi Masira Karsi, right? According to Rebbe Lezer, it says v'kasav v'nasan. So, according to Rebbe Lezer, there's two parts. There's the ksiva and the nesina. The main part is the nesina. That has to be done in front of the edim. But ksiva means the ksiva is again. The ksiva we learned can't be in the mechuber because then you have to coat it. You have to cut it off, like we said at the beginning of the daf. You have to be it's bechutz or ksitza. So therefore, you have to answer that the get, the main part of the get, was written after it was already severed, right? The part that was ancillary wasn't so important. That was written while it's mechuber. That doesn't hold you back. But the l'chadchila is supposed to be all written while it's severed. But if the main part is written after it's severed, that's okay, right? Because here Lezer holds the ksiva is important, right? Really, the Eidim Asira cards. The beginning of the first line of the Mishnah says you shouldn't write even the tofes, right? Because you might end up writing the whole thing while it's mechuber l'karka, while it's attached to the ground. Because of the tofes or talsho, the next line in the Mishnah says if you wrote it b'di'evet, you wrote the tofes while it was still attached to the ground, and then you severed it from the ground, and then kasvel the toref, and then while it was detached, you wrote the toref v'nasnu la kasher. It's kasher. Rishlakish is a different explanation on our Mishnah. Our chasmu shanina. Our Mishnah is talking about signing it. Reb Meir here. Our Mishnah follows Reb Meir. According to Reb Meir, the Eidei Masira is not the most important thing. The Eidei Chasima is the most important thing. When the Torah says v'kasav v'nasan, v'kasav doesn't mean the writing of the get. Kasav means the signing of the get. That's the only thing that's important according to Reb Meir. What does the Mishnah say? Ain't kosen toref. You can't write the toref. Gzeira shama yachton. Technically, according to Reb Meir, we'll see in a second, if you signed it while it was detached, that's okay. The first line of the Mishnah, look at Chile, you're not supposed to even write the get, the main part of the get, even though Midoraisa it's okay. Because you might sign it when it's still attached. Kasal the Torah of Talshel Chasma V'Nasan La Kasher. Second line of the Mishnah says that B'di'eved, if you didn't listen to what the Rabbanan said, and you wrote it, even the main part of the get, but then you detached it and you signed it, that's all that makes it valid Midoraisa. You give it to her, that is kosher, that's not a problem. That's the conclusion of today's shir. Stay tuned for Iyad Ben Sion when I talk on Amid Aleph, a very lumdish machlokas between Rava and Abaye. I'm pretty sure we paskin like Rava, but I'll explain the machlokas Rava and Abaye in greater detail. Ian with Ben Sion coming up next.